Hello and welcome to the next of these skill development videos, and what we're going to look at is build on top of what you hopefully have gone through or reminded yourselves of last time in the first video, and your setup on Unity. You've got a bit of an idea of what some of the different windows might be doing, and now we're going to have a look at setting up something simple and starting to work through it so that you've got some bit of a sense of how Unity's working and how it develops in different ways. Okay, so we're going to do something really nice and simple. We're just going to try and make a quick version of our own of Pong, the kind of paddle based game where you can bounce the ball between each other and see you get it past the other one. All right, so nice and simple, nothing kind of too taxing, but it will just give us a sense of going through a number of different elements as we bring them into Unity. Some different look at some of the components that we might need to use. We'll do a little bit of C# scripting that goes with it, and then look at how we can bring that together. And I'm going to leave it at a point where you will then be able to maybe have a play around with it, see how you can improve it, see how you can take it on a bit further, and it would be great to see some of your results and see what you can come up with. So nice and simple. What we'll do is, if we just jump to my second display, make sure I get the right one. All right, hopefully when you go through you've got this hub coming up and it's working, and you've got maybe some projects that you've been playing around with or testing in your window over here. All right, so we'll go to new, and what we're going to do is we are actually going to do a 2D setup. So we're going to go to 2D here, so make sure you're selected on there, and then like I said before, make sure that you give it an appropriate name so that you know where to find it and where to sync it up. I'm just going to put 2 at the end of mine because I think I have another one in that folder, so I don't want to get confused. Okay, and then click create, and you will find that Unity will just take a minute or two to initialize the template, to get everything up and running and to go through. All right, so while that's happening for me, hopefully it won't take us too long. I've got a grey screen in front of you, but you've got me there as well. We'll just jump back to me in full. So while that's uploading, we'll have a little talk through about what we're going to look at. So we're going to bring in some elements that we're going to interact with, that we'll have control of. So we'll have control of the 2 paddles that are going to go up and down the sides. We'll look at how we add some physics to the ball as it's bouncing around and it's moving around the screen, and then ultimately we'll put in a way of scoring so that we can keep track of who's in front of who and who's in the lead. All right, and that way we've got all that we need and all of the basic elements of what we need to look at to get our game up and running. Okay, so hopefully my Unity is almost open. And there you go. Through the wonders of video editing, I paused it for a second just to get us all up and running. So let's jump to my second display so that I'm on screen as well. So there we've got it. We've got our Unity setup. So it looks a little bit different if you kind of watch the first video through, because obviously we're in a 2D space, not a 3D space. But essentially we have the same what's in front of us. So we've got this sample scene with our main camera in. We've got our hierarchy here, our scene and our game view here, our inspector on the right hand side, and our project window down the bottom. Now what I would say, I didn't say it before, but you can change the view of this and where things are. So you've got a layout option up here where there's some defaults, and you can even save your own layout in there as well. So you can jump to kind of a 4 split if you wanted it that way, so that you can see different scenes all in one go. You've got 2x3 and so on and so forth. So you've got a number of different things that you can play around with. I'm quite happy with the default, me personally, but you can style it and change it around so it suits you, whatever works best for you. Okay, so what we're going to look at is just getting some of our elements in. So what I would say is that I am using a kind of walkthrough, if you like, a bit of a tutorial from a site called Moo ICT, as in the cow. I'll put a link in the description so that you can go and have a look at it yourself. And there's some images that we need to get from there. And again, the link will be in the description for what you need. So we need some of those files to put across. So you'll find a link in the description. And in there, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different files. Okay. Nothing too taxing. We've got some elements that we're going to use as our wall. We've got our paddles that we're going to play around with. We've got our ball, and this dotted line is to just represent the middle of the screen, so you can see when the ball's coming across to your side. All right. So what we need to do is get all of these into Unity so that we can affect them in different ways. So we can select them all from here and just drag them in. One thing I would say is that this will be a zipped file when you download it. Make sure you extract it before you start dragging things into Unity, otherwise it won't work. Okay, so it's a common thing that sometimes happens when you're a little bit overzealous about what you're trying to do, and you'll miss the fact that you need to get it in there. Okay, so now we've got our elements within our project window, so we can see that we've got some assets in there. Now, one thing that I haven't done, which is remiss of me, is that I haven't changed my scene name. Okay, which is an absolute no-no, because I said that you should do that all the time when in the last video. It's not the end of the world, but because I said I'd do it, let's do it. So we'll go into scenes, we'll right click and create and new scene, and I'm going to call this main level so that I know what it is. Okay, so there we go, and then I can double click on it here, and then we've got main level up here. So I'm now not in that sample scene that's there by default, and I can just go back to my project window, and all my files are there because I haven't actually dragged them into any scene yet. They're just in the project window for the game itself rather than for this level that we're working on at the moment. So and we've still got our main camera in place, so that's all fine. Okay, so we're now in a nice setup. So apologies, I forgot that one before. So what we need to have a little think about first is where we're going to put our main camera and where we're going to set up our walls and our things. So I'm just resizing something so that I can see a little bit easier as I go through my notes. Oh dear, that zoomed in a bit too much. Right, apologies. There we go. Right, so let's have a little look. So first of all, we're going to select our camera, and we're just going to sort some settings out on our camera first. And it's a good idea that we make sure that our camera is on the line, and make sure it's kind of all lined up with where we need it to be. So let's just tweak some settings. That's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my background here. So we can click in here, and you'll have to excuse me, I'll have to remember to bring some of these windows across where I'm working across two screens. And we'll set our background so it's black, and you can see that that changed in there. And then we're just going to change our size of our camera from 5 to 40 so that we've got a bit of a better kind of zoomed in elements, and I think everything else will be all right with. All right, so when we get playing now, you'll see that we go to our game and we have a black screen and nothing much else. All right, but we're actually in the game now. So when you hit play up there, you can interact and you can play with the game, but nothing much is going on at the moment. And you can see it's automatically jumped to my game tab as well. So we'll come off of play and go back into scene so that we can change things around. Remember as well, please, that whenever you click play and you're viewing it, you can't change anything in terms of the options. Make sure whenever you want to change anything, whenever you want to tweak anything, that you come out of the play mode so that you can see different bits and pieces. All right, so next thing that we want to do is we want to set up our walls so that we know that they're ready to go. So if we just select on our wall here, we can see that even when we're selecting it, even though it's not in the scene, we've got some options over here in our inspector for what we want to have a little look at. Okay, so we need to make sure of a few things. We need to make sure firstly that our texture type is sprite 2D and UI, all right, which this one is defaulted to very nicely, but just in case it's on anything else, make sure please that you select it to Sprite 2D and UI, so it's on there. And then we want our sprite and single mode, and we want our pixels per unit to be 1. All right, so that we get a decent size, an appropriate size I should say, sorry, when we bring our files into our game mode. All right, once you've done that, click apply, and it will apply those settings to our wall icon there. Okay, and now we can zoom out. Now I'm going to play around with mine, and I'm going to set this so you can see that this white bar is essentially the boundaries of our screen. So I'm going to set my wall up so that it's matching that. So let's get it somewhere in the middle of our screen there. Okay, and you'll see that it's in place. And then we can click on our scale tool, if you remember, it's just up here. And then we can, with the handles, so we've only got 2 axes to worry about at the moment, and we can stretch that out. And you can even go over a little bit because the camera's going to be set in a way where it will only see what's on screen. So let's just zoom in and make sure we're all right. Yeah, that's okay. All right, so the key thing with this is making sure that once you've got some of your elements in, that you are labeling them up. So let's right click here and rename this one within our scene, and we'll call this, we'll call it top wall. It's not quite a wall, is it? But that'll do. Okay, and then we can select here, and you can right click in your hierarchy, and you can see you've got a duplicate option. So if we hit duplicate, we can see we've got a new version of it now. So we can right click and rename, and we'll call this bottom wall. And then we'll select on our move tool, and we will just move it straight down because it will duplicate right on top of the other one that you've duplicated it from. So we don't need to worry too much about its positioning because we can just drag it straight down. All right, let's bring a new one in. Now this time we need to spin it around 90 degrees because we want it to be our left wall and our right wall eventually. Okay, so we can go to our rotation. Let's just show you with the rotation tool. So you can click on your rotation tool and you can start turning your finger out. Now my mouse control is sometimes a bit iffy, so if we just kind of turn it down, we can see we're almost there. Another way of doing it is just to whack 90 in there on the rotation scale, and you can get it in there. Okay, so you've got 2 options of how you might rotate things around, either in the inspector or through your tool. And let's get that into position roughly in the middle. And we're not quite there. We're a bit zoomed out, aren't we? Let's zoom in a little bit. So we're not quite there yet. So let's go back to our scale tool and select our object. And let's pull out those handles. And it's putting out from the middle point so that we can get it just over the line there. And then let's remember, let's rename our wall. So let's call it left wall. And then let's duplicate again and call this one our right wall. Oh. Okay. So naming conventions may be boring to you, but they are essential. Especially when we come to our scripting later and we're referencing different bits and pieces, you need to make sure that you're naming things up correctly and that you're setting them out right, so that when you need to find them in your scripts, when you need to find them in your inspector or wherever it might be, that they're nice and easy to spot and to find. So there you go, we've now got our walls in and they're good to go. If we hit play, we should hopefully jump to our screen, and you can see there that we've got our walls in play on our screen. Okay, so it's key to have those in because those are the boundaries of our game. We're going to use those to when they're hit, when they're struck, and something collides with them, they're going to have a slightly different effect on the game, obviously. So we're going to play around with how that might work next. All right, so we've got those elements in there. And we've got our renderer on there, like I said, we've got our transform options. All right. What we need though is we need something on there so that when we're writing our scripts later, it can reference whether or not some of those objects have been collided with. Okay, so what we can do is we can select all of these in one go. Okay, just by clicking on the bottom one, holding down shift and then selecting up there in the top one on your hierarchy, whatever order you've done them in. Okay, come over to your inspector and hit add component, and this time you can start typing in box, and we are looking for a box collider 2D. Make sure you get the 2D one because we're working on a 2D plane at the moment, and they're all labelled up very nicely, so it's just a 2D one that we need, and away we go. And now we've added that component to every individual thing, so you can see there that we've got a box collider on each of them individually, because we could do them all in one go. Okay, so that's a box collider, and that's going to give us some collision elements that we want to play around with as we go through and we start looking at how we're going to put our game together. What we will need as well is our dotted line as well. So if we select our dotted line, if we make sure it's a sprite, yes it is. Let's do pixels per unit as 1 so that it comes in at a similar size to the others, and then we're just going to drag this in. Why didn't that work? There we go. I missed it, that's why. We're going to drag that in roughly in the middle, and what's nice is that I've got the grid up so that we can see it. You should hopefully have it by default as well. And then we can just extend that line out by the scale. Let's make sure we get it to go over. And then when we hit play, we should be able to see, yeah, there's our dotted line. So there's our halfway point. Okay, so we can see now we've got our playing area set out. All right, nice and simple and ready to go. What we want to make sure is that with the dotted line is that we're not going to add any collider on it because we want the ball to fly over that. It's just a reference point for the players as they're going through and they're having a look at playing the game. They know when the ball's coming towards them. So we don't want that to have any collision. So we'll leave that as is. All right. So that is our playing area set up. And let's get our 2 paddles in as well. So let's have a look. We've got paddle blue and we've got paddle red. All right. So again, we can do them one by one just so that we make sure. Select paddle 2, make sure it's on sprite unit. Yes, it is. Let's do the same with paddle red, pixels per unit 1, and apply. Okay, and then they're good to go and drag in. All right, so let's drag our red one over here and let's drag our blue one on the left hand side. All right, so that's our playing areas. And I'm going to just ever so slightly increase them because they look a little bit small. So let's just increase it a little bit. Let's maybe take it up to, because you can change it on here as well. Let's maybe take it up to, all 3 might be a bit big actually. It's only a small playing area. Let's go 2.5. All right, so let's select this one, make sure we're on a scale, 2.5, and we can always change that later if we want to. That's not a problem. Okay, so we've got our paddles in there, and again, because our paddles are obviously going to be colliding with the ball, we need to make sure that we've got a box collider on those. So let's select them both and add a component, and because I've still got it typed in, box collider 2D, and let's whack that in there and make sure it's on there. Okay, so we've got our playing area and now we've got our paddles in place as well. So let's make sure, because I haven't done it yet, that we just go File and Save, and it will save everything that we've done so far so that we're in place. Right, so go over everything on there. That's all we'll do on this video, and then that should be you set up. So let's just have a quick last look at where we are in terms of our game and how it's looking. So we've got our playing area sorted. We've got our paddles in place. We might just need to move this one across to the left so that they're in a similar position as they go up and down, because I've just missed that one out. So that's something to go back and have a look at. So take some time, set out your game, set out your playing area. Remember your dotted line to mark out your halfway, and get your paddles in so that we've got our players ready. And then in the next video, we'll start looking at how we can put them together with some scripts to get them moving and to get them interacting on our game. All right, thanks very much. I hope you are keeping up to date and keeping all of that going. We'll look at what we can do next in our next video, and I'll see you soon.